Just let me work, just let me work. My way of grinding. Yeah, my way of grinding. Woo. I told him that I'm out here grinding. I'm out here grinding. Hey, hey. You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work, show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it, I ain't playing with you, I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids.
Welcome in, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler here on this Tuesday, on this really cold and icy / wintry mix / nasty, whatever the heck's going on outside. Wednesday. Hope everyone, or Tuesday, I should say. Hope everybody's having a good one so far, trying to stay warm. Hopefully the power's back on wherever you are. I know we had to deal with a lot of that this morning here in the Stillwater area, so hopefully everybody is good to go, and you're tuned into the right spot here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. As soon as we get the Afternoon Sports Drive rocking here, actually going to bring in one of our normal Tuesday guests just a little bit early, coming up in about 20 minutes or so. Also have Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World is going to join us and talk about that big Oklahoma State victory on Saturday over ISU. And then coming up this Saturday, obviously Texas is on deck. We'll get into all of that coming up here in just a little bit. But before I have my first guest on, we got to play this.
Uh-oh! Someone had some daddy issues.
Nothing could be my father from the truth.
Who? You said my father. No, I didn't.
How? Did not.
Shabba!
For me, this is a dad issue.
Dad issue! Dad! Deadbeat dad! Oh. Daddy didn't love me!
That means Rodger Wheeler's on the line. Dad, how's it going?
Hey, it's going good, son. What's going on down there?
Well, we're trying to, we're getting a little bit of wintry nastiness here already in October. So it's
well, you're the one that says you love the cold, so I guess you're getting to experience that now.
Yeah, I do. I stand by that statement. I am not a summer fan by any means, and I think fall and winter are the best seasons. However, we didn't really get to experience much of a fall is my problem. You know, we didn't get to have a lot of that. It went kind of straight into not just winter, but the most extreme of winter already.
Well, you know, we're not that far away from each other, you know, and yet I've noticed something about our weathers, how they, during the summer, when it's hot here, it's really hot where you are, but when it's cold here, it's really cold where you are, and it does a flip-flop, and I don't quite understand that system quite yet. I mean, it's cold and rainy here, and it snowed around us, but yeah, we're not dealing with ice yet, and here you are where it's usually like 20 degrees warmer than it is where I am, and you're dealing with ice storm.
Yeah, it iced pretty solid overnight, that's no doubt, and it's been pouring down rain really the rest of today, and I know we're supposed to still get more tomorrow, so it's definitely a mess. I'm just happy that we're able to get on air because we had to start off some of the programming a little later than usual today, but we are good to go, and of course that means we get you to have on come on with us here on Tuesdays as always, and I thought we should get right into some NFL because I thought it was really an interesting game we'll start with the Chiefs. I thought their game was pretty interesting in the snow against Dallas because we saw them, or Denver I should say, because they dominated in that game, but at the same time they did it with Patrick Mahomes only throwing for 200 yards. You ended up having a pick six, and then back-to-back you had a kick return for a touchdown. So the offense was kind of not even able to get out there on the field Sunday all that much. But I think it kind of proved like they can really score any way they want to, right?
And that's exactly why the rest of the NFL should be concerned, because now, we kind of pulled the curtain back and let them see the rest of what the Chiefs can do, and it does include their defense and their special teams and just the plethora of ways that they can create, points on the scoreboard. That should scare everybody else. Yeah,
I thought that too. It was kind of my first thought was they put all the domination they've had against Denver is really unprecedented though. But with everybody else, no doubt would look at that and say, okay, Mahomes nearly busted his streak of consecutive games with a touchdown there. That's how much the offense very little had to do with it in that game. But it was still a good win. One of the interesting parts, the takeaways from that game, too, we knew it was going to be Le'Veon Bell's first game as a Chief. And we got to see him a little bit. He got 6 carries compared to Clyde Edwards-Helaire's 9. And, of course, Clyde got the touchdown and honestly should have had a second one. He dropped it in the end zone. But we didn't get to see a huge difference in carries with the running backs. But we know that the Jets are next. They're on deck for Kansas City, obviously Le'Veon's team where he came from. How do you see it shaking out against the Jets? Is this a game where the Chiefs maybe give Le'Veon a bit more of the carries here just to kind of get a revenge game going?
I think if you were trying to write a movie script, that you would probably say, yeah, it's going to be Le'Veon's game, and he's going to get a chance at revenge, and they're just going to pelt the Jets with more and more Le'Veon Bell. I don't think that's what's going to happen personally. I think it's going to be maybe closer to a 50-50 ride. I think this is a progression, and I don't think we're going to see anything just automatically tilt one direction or the other now, because I think it's just another weapon. And I thought Le'Veon looked, really good, in good shape, obviously. Was, just a matter of learning the offense and wanting to accept his role on a team that, that might get him that ring that he wants. I think that's a big part of it. So I don't see like 25 carries for Le'Veon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, on the bench or only on third downs or anything like that. I think I would look for a more 50-50 switch, going back and forth.
Do you think it'll also be that way, say, by the time Kansas City gets into the playoffs? Do you still see it as being a split backfield, or do you expect maybe someone with a hot hand to take over, whether it's Le'Veon or Clyde?
I think it'll be a hot hand situation, but I think it won't surprise me to see Le'Veon take over as long as he stays healthy, learns the playbook. I don't see a problem with him taking over those carries. Like I said, with Andy Reid, you never can tell. He's got lots of talent, lots of weapons, lots of toys to play with, and this just adds to it. But I could see by the end of the season if Le'Veon is really taking over, that he's your lead back. But other than that, I see a 50-50, split if he doesn't just take over. In one game, if he has 125, 150 yards rushing, yeah, he may get that backfield for a while.
Rodger Wheeler joining me here as always on Tuesdays on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Do you want to take a guess as to what Vegas has the Chiefs opening on their line against the Jets this Sunday?
I haven't seen that, but I obviously it's in double figures. I would say it's somewhere around 20, 21.
It's close, yeah. And right now it's at 19.5, and I think it's going to go up before it's all said and done, before Sunday rolls around. I don't remember the last time in the NFL that I've seen a spread that large. In college you see it all the time, but the NFL, no, I don't know if I've seen one that much. But is this? I mean, to you, I'm sure you probably think the same way I am. I could see this kind of being a Patrick Mahomes maybe rests for the better half of the third quarter into the whole fourth, possibly, right?
I'm sure that could happen. The thing is, it kind of goes back to the idea that for the Jets, this game is going to be their Super Bowl. This is their one opportunity to shine against what I think everyone would agree is one of the best, if not the best team in the NFL. So they're going to take it a little more serious than maybe other Sunday afternoons. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that a little closer than maybe we think through at least the first half. And, that may keep your stars in the game a bit longer into the third quarter. But I do at the same time see some point, probably in the mid-third quarter, I see where you're going to see the Chiefs just run off, 14, 17 points in a matter of a couple of minutes, and then it's just over. Yeah,
I don't think it's going to it's one of those games where the Jets might not want to show up, honestly. But I want to get your thoughts, too, on the Cowboys. This past weekend, obviously with Washington, they come in and should be competitive against a team like that. However, Dallas, I think the wheels have fallen off. Now we see Andy Dalton get hit, which I'm sure you've seen that hit that he took and is out with the concussion. And I thought, to me, that was about as egregious of a targeting hit that I've ever seen, maybe ever, and in college or the NFL. And right now we're hearing there's probably not going to be any suspension handed out to John Bostic, which I just don't understand how that's not possible, or how that's not going to happen. But the thing that got me, which we talked about yesterday, I want to know what you think, is the Cowboys, when that happened, there was no retaliation. There was nobody on the team that ran over and tried to fight John Bostic or tried to take him, out and then back up their quarterback. Basically, it was Andy Dalton getting hit, and it was, he got hit. And I know that if it was Dak Prescott, we'd be on here today still talking about that massive brawl that happened between Washington and Dallas. So did that right there, the fact that there was no retaliation, did that to you kind of raise the flag of, look, we just don't really care about either Andy Dalton or anything else going on in this offense right now?
Yeah, the apathy is thick, and I think the Cowboys are at the point where, as you and I talked about it last week on the show, that there's no real leadership anymore, and nobody's playing for anybody else. None of these guys are willing to go to war with the other and be there and have their back. And therefore, that shows you, that's a sign, that's the flag flying saying, we don't have it together. We don't have leadership. We don't have any camaraderie that we're going to work together and try to do good things. Because in this division, as I said last week, this is a team that can still get themselves in the playoffs very easily, with a 6-win, 7-win season. And yet I think they've realized, hey, we don't even like each other, much less want to go to battle for each other. And therefore, it's every man for himself. And how soon can I get myself out of this mess? And, yeah, it's a mess. There are leaders that should be stepping up that have chosen, to stand back and not want to be a part of this team. And, America's team, nothing. This isn't even Dallas's team anymore.
That's a great point. It really isn't. Have you ever seen, in the time you've watched football, or maybe just sports, ever seen an injury to one player have an effect on a team like Dak's injury has had on the Dallas Cowboys?
Wow, that's a good question. I think that there have been those type of situations where you see a guy go down and all heck seems to break loose in your organization. But it's the signs of a good program when that doesn't occur.
Exactly.
And I'm trying to think in my head of situations, and once we get off the air, I'm sure I'll think of a dozen of them. But there are lots of those situations where teams that's their implosion. It's like, okay, you took away our strongest link, and therefore we're finished. And then they do. And it starts at the top, and it's a matter of what the top does to show that we're still supporting this team, this organization. If Yadier Molina, when he goes down, the Cardinals suffer. It's hard to do a next man up when you don't have that next man that can step in and hold the ship until the captain gets back.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where they are. I don't know if I've ever really seen a trickle-down effect like we have in Dallas. It's pretty next level of a meltdown. Let me get your thoughts, too, on the New England Patriots. I mean, I'm sitting there watching the game Sunday, and they looked like they'd never played together. And that was Cam Newton just botching it. I mean, his throws were not good. He wasn't accurate. The receivers weren't doing him a ton of favors getting open, although we have seen it work. I mean, you go back to week 2, and he was dominating with those receivers, and he looked really good against the Seahawks. But since then, we know he had COVID and all that. It's just been an absolute train wreck in New England. Is this something that when you watch the game Sunday, did you maybe think like I did of, okay, it looked good at first, but maybe the Patriots aren't going to get as much out of Cam Newton as they thought?
I think they've roller coastered us through the first 7 weeks of the season here, where in the off season we didn't think the Patriots were going to be anything anymore without Tom Brady at the helm, and then boom, they are able to sign Cam Newton. Hey, maybe this team will be able to compete, and then they start the season and it's kind of iffy, and then it goes, like you said, to a week where, whoa, okay, he's back, Cam Newton's back, he is Superman, and Bill Belichick has done his magic. He's got this team performing exactly the way he wants to, and then all of a sudden now we see the other side, and I'm just thinking that there's something not right with Cam Newton, whether it be from the COVID-19 situation or health in general. Something's not right. And until it comes out and says, yeah, he was playing the last couple of weeks, with something else going on that he didn't tell the team about or something of that effect, I think you're going to see this roller coaster up and down. 1 week, okay, the next week, just complete trash of a performance. And they're obviously not going to be the team that they've been in the past, and I say that with a lot of joy.
Yeah, I know a lot of people do as well, and it really just was. And I'm not a Patriots fan. I have always enjoyed watching them play though, because I've always liked their style of offense. However, what I saw on Sunday was just embarrassing as a football fan. Like, that was just one of the worst performances I've ever seen. Now, I said this yesterday on the show, okay, to Levi, and I want you to tell me if I'm being too extreme here, or if I'm maybe thinking about something that could possibly happen. I said they looked so bad on both sides of the ball that the New York Jets might actually have an opportunity to make it a game when they play the Patriots down the road. Is that too extreme of me?
That's pretty extreme, son. I don't think that it's that serious.
Okay.
I think motivation issues are obviously there, but I don't think a Bill Belichick team is going to lower themselves to that deficit. No. I
mean, they already lost to the Broncos, and that's kind of bad. So, I mean, that's one that you can knock off as a really bad team that beat them. But the Patriots are just, oh my gosh.
I just think it's interesting that Tom Brady is having the exact same type experience in Tampa. He's good one week and he looks horrible the next, and they're a Super Bowl contender one week and they're not going to even make the playoffs the next. And I'm still a believer that those two Bs belong together with Belichick and Brady. You put them together, I think they could make the Jets pretty good. I think they could make the Broncos pretty good. But you separate them, and they're not worth what they're the price in milk, much less anything else.
Well, then I think we're seeing that the divorce is now absolutely in Tom Brady's favor, because with the Bucs, these last couple of games have looked really good. And then you add Antonio Brown to the mix, and maybe it gets actually even better. I mean, but Tom Brady, his last game was the most complete we've seen him play with the Bucs, and it looked like vintage Tom Brady. Oh, by the way, their defense has turned into one of the best defenses in the league. So you mix that together. First of all, let's look at Antonio Brown real quick, okay? Now that he's going to be in the mix, do you see this as being something that works out for Antonio Brown and the Bucs, or is it a couple of games and he's out for some other off-the-field issue?
I think it's going to depend on how much usage that he actually gets. There's a lot of pieces on that team as well, as far as that need to touch the ball. And you just added another one, and is he going to get enough action to keep him satisfied, to keep him from getting mouthy? Because we know that in Pittsburgh, that was the issue at first. That first started it all was, I need the ball more. You're starting to spread it around too much, Big Ben. It's time to get it back in my hands. And that's what started to cause the problem. So I think it will depend on a week or two with him in the lineup. Can he get the ball enough? With three other really quality wide receivers, somebody's going to have to step out of the way. And I know you think that's Mike Evans. We've had that conversation.
It will be.
But if they're still on the field together, though, AB's going to need some touches. And if he doesn't get those touches, and I'll answer your question. I think 2 weeks, and you're going to have some sort of an issue. Something's going to come up. Because I thought that when Brown went to the Patriots, I thought, okay, this is going to work because they need him, and he still didn't get the touches he wanted.
Well,
Brady was the one that tried to get him there.
It wasn't even that, though. I think that he would have been okay in New England had the sexual assault allegations not come out, right? Because it was Robert Kraft that was kind of forced to make a move there, and then we find out that Tom Brady wasn't happy about him getting rid of Antonio Brown, even though he had those allegations. So if that hadn't happened, I think he would have stayed.
I don't think so. I think, wide receivers and defensive backs are prima donnas, and they want the attention, and the only way to truly get attention in the NFL is to touch the football.
Well, but he did. He had like 4 or 5 catches and a touchdown in his one game, and he outcaught Julian Edelman at the time, who was their number one receiver. If anything, he was the one that should be mad. So I didn't think there was a production issue with it.
I think that's going to be an issue now. I think I see what you're saying. I know what you mean with the allegations that came at him. He's going to get those, just because of the way he's handled the ones in the past. But I still think production, AB production is 9 or 10 catches a game, and then if he doesn't get that type of action in Tampa, you're going to have the same issues. I'm going to say 2 or 3 weeks, and he'll probably be asking, to be let go or quit or disappear, or who knows what'll happen with him. I lost a lot of confidence in the guy. The way he's handled situations over the last few years.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely mentally unstable. I mean, I know that for sure, and there are a lot of risks, and Bruce Arians even said earlier this year he wasn't interested in signing Antonio Brown, but something changed, and that something was Tom Brady. Last thing.
You got to wonder. One thing I wonder about that is if Bruce Arians, if they attempted anything with Des Bryant at all, did they talk to both these guys, I wonder, or was AB their guy?
I think AB was their guy because of the relationship we knew that he actually did have with Tom Brady when they were in New England. Remember, Tom let him into his house, and he was like the whole, big brother situation where I'm going to take care of you, make sure you're on the right path type thing. So I think it was that more so than what Dez is going to do, which obviously we know he's now going to look like be a part of the Ravens. So you got to.
Well, that's the thing to me is I don't understand. In Tampa, there's not this gaping hole at wide receiver like there was in New England, and I just wonder what his role will be and how they're going to keep him happy. Yeah,
it's not going to be easy. I mean, I don't think it's going to be an easy road no matter what. Last thing I want to throw your way here real quick. World Series, obviously we have, Game 6 tonight? Did you ever, the ending on Friday night, have you ever seen an ending to a World Series game or just a baseball game? You ever seen an ending like that before?
That's not quite like that, but I will always throw back, which today happens to be the anniversary of David Freese's home run in Game 6 in 2011. And this being the anniversary of that, it's interesting that we're talking about that. That was one of those occasions, Kirk Gibson's home run in his only at-bat for the Dodgers in the World Series in 1988 comes into the mind. But to have someone, that literally trips, falls, does a summer roll, and able to get himself to the plate, and it to be Randy Arozarena, which you and I both love, watched him play Double-A ball in Springfield a number of times, and we said then, this guy's going to be a star, and we were right, and he's going to be remembered forever for a number of things that have happened in the playoffs, and I'm proud of him that he's getting this opportunity in Tampa. But I will ask you, son, what did I tell you last Tuesday was my prediction for the World Series?
Well, you told me the Dodgers were going to win.
In how many games?
I think you said 6.
That's right. And here we are.
Yeah.
Tonight's Game 6. The Dodgers will win this game. I think it won't even be close. I'm going to predict something in the effect of 9-2, 11-2, somewhere in that range. Won't even be a game by the third or fourth inning. It's going to be over, and the Dodgers will win it in 6, just like I predicted.
Wow, okay. I think that's maybe. I don't know if they're going to just dominate. I'm expecting more of a close game here. I want the Rays to win really bad. They were my prediction coming into this World Series that they're going to take it, and maybe they do in 7. But
how many times am I going to tell you these kind of things, and you're still going to play me off and think you know more than your dad does? Your dad has got these things figured out.
I'm telling you. I just can't get over the fact that you picked the Dodgers, okay? It's bothered me.
I'm not happy about that either, but that's picking with your head and not your heart.
I've been down that road where I've had issues with that before, okay?
I know. I've tried to train you better.
That's Rodger Wheeler joining me here on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Dad, I appreciate it as always. Go Rays, and we'll be talking about Game 7. I'm sure I'll let you know when Game 7 rolls around. The Rays are about to win it.
That's fair. Drive safe in the bad weather. We need to keep you safe for your mama.
That's right, no doubt. All right, appreciate it, Dad. All right,
see you later.
All right, that's Rodger Wheeler on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. When we come back, Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World will join us.
I don't wanna wait for our life to be over. You have it, but you take it how you left it.
Triple Play Sports Radio Network. This is the Afternoon Sports Drive. Patrick Wheeler here on this Tuesday. And joining me now, like always on Tuesdays, Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World. Frank, how's it going, man? I hope you're staying warm in Tulsa.
Yeah, staying pretty warm. Sorry to hear, how it is in other areas like Stillwater with the ice storm. It sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, it's a little wintry mix kind of nastiness going on out there, no doubt. We got the ice and the rain and the everything else that comes along with it. So, which includes power outages and all that stuff, of course. So yeah, I think for the most part though, hopefully everybody's trying to get that back and kind of rocking and rolling, hopefully with us, right, on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network here, getting to hear Frank Bonner's hit, which, Frank, first of all, when you look at the game Saturday, because we're going to get into that and talk a little about Texas too, but when you look at the game Saturday, just to you in general, how big of a win do you think that was for Oklahoma State?
I think it was huge, for the fact that they showed, because that was the biggest game of the conference and one of the biggest games, nationally. And for them to be able to show up and prove that they can perform on the big stage, I think it was big for them, for their confidence moving forward as they face teams like Texas and then Kansas State and Oklahoma. But then also for them to get the national recognition that they may not have gotten, from the first 3 games that they played. So I think it was big. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I agree with you on that, too. For you, since Spencer did get the go-ahead like we kind of suspected would happen, how do you think he looked overall? If you could give Spencer a grade for his performance on Saturday, what would you give him?
I'll give him a B.
Okay.
Just because we knew there would be some rust, right? And we saw that with the 2 interceptions. So obviously, turnovers were a problem last year, so he still needs to clean that up. I mean, he had 2 turnovers against Texas, last year. But he did enough to win, and he didn't try to do too much that we see out of him sometimes. I mean, outside of those 2 interceptions, he played a pretty decent game. I mean, the ankle looked fine. I mean, he rushed for 71 yards.
Sure.
And so I think he did and Gunny talked about his poise and, not getting too competitive. I think we saw that. He didn't try to do too much and put his team in a bad situation. So I'd give him a B. He still needs to, not have those 2 picks, but he played all right.
Yeah, that's basically where I was too. I thought that it was, like you mentioned there, when Gundy talked about his composure, that was definitely something that was encouraging to see. I think it showed his maturity a little bit there too, as well as, the play obviously where he takes that high snap and he picks it up and he's able to make a play there. That's also a really mature play. So there were some encouraging signs. But obviously his composure is a big one too. Do you think that at least for the moment it has quieted the talk about Shane maybe taking over?
Yeah, and I don't know if that – and no slight on Shane. I think we talked about this last week. Like, he did a really good job coming in as a true freshman, but I don't think there was any real danger for Spencer Sanders to not be the guy moving forward. I mean, I know fans like to get into that conversation, when you see a backup doing well, but I don't think from that coaching staff, even when Gundy had mentioned that he may play 2 quarterbacks, I didn't put any stock into that. I think Sanders, is your for sure guy.
Yeah, I'm with you too. For the most that it ever did was give us sports talk guys plenty to talk about. So,
right,
which we appreciated, obviously. Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World joining me here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. I think that after this game too, Chuba to me at the running back spot has kind of officially settled in a little bit, and I'm curious if you agree with that as well as how great was that touchdown run of his?
Yeah, right, and I mean, I think the touchdown run was the typical Chuba Hubbard that we're used to seeing. And, I think for fans who may have been wondering, where his head was at this year and, is he going to have, a slump from last year? I think he showed in a big-time game where they needed him to make some plays that he will still be the running back they need him to be. And, I think that's big for them. And then especially with Sanders coming back and they have that, quarterback, running back, rushing attack that they have going on. I mean, I think you can expect what you've always expected out of him to, at this point moving forward.
Did you ever think that in that game Oklahoma State would score a touchdown with the tight end before Iowa State did?
No, did not. And it was actually pretty, if I take one takeaway from that game was it was pretty exciting to see them get their tight ends involved the way they did.
Agreed.
Logan Carter, Jelani Woods. I mean, Woods got that, career-long 34-yard catch for the touchdown. I mean, and they talked about it after the game that the tight ends came into this game with a little rivalry after, hearing about Iowa State's tight ends all week long, and to see them get their shot and to capitalize on those opportunities, I think was pretty exciting for the coaching staff to see and the fans. I mean, all around, it was a pretty good win for their offense.
Well, yeah, for sure. And I thought that one of the best stats from the tight end position was that all catches by tight ends resulted in moving the chains or the touchdown there for Oklahoma State. That's a huge stat. I mean, it shows you that they have to be more involved, especially on third downs, but it's another added weapon for Spencer. So it certainly was fun to see that. How impressive, speaking of the offense, how impressive was that kind of that banged up offensive line, but the performance they put on, right?
Yeah, I think they are getting, in the beginning of the year, that offensive line in terms of the positions and injuries was so fluid. I think you can see them creating some type of identity now, especially with Jake and Hunter being more comfortable after being thrown in the fire. I think that offensive line is really starting to come together, and they're being less of a liability than they were in those first couple of games.
Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World joining me here in the afternoon sports drive. Defensively, they still looked really good, minus kind of stopping Breece Hall, which is obviously pretty tough to do. But do you think they made a statement by holding Brock Purdy under 200 yards and also kind of taking away the tight ends, which we know are Iowa State's main weapons?
Yeah, I do think they did. And even with Breece Hall, I mean, Breece Hall had a big day, but that's because he ran for 70 yards on one play, and he had a 56-yard touchdown on another. Outside of those two plays, they held him for under 3 yards per carry for the rest of the game outside of those two big plays. So I think, when you're going against Big 12 offenses, as much as you try to limit those big plays are going to happen, right?
Right.
And even on that 70-yard run, they held him to a field goal that ended up being missed. Mm-hmm. And so I think as a defense, they gave up a lot of rushing yards, but at the end of the day, you did what you needed to do in stopping, Brock Purdy, which was the best quarterback you've ever faced at this point, and you showed that you could be counted on in a big game.
Do you think that we see this matchup with Oklahoma State and Iowa State again, possibly in the Big 12 championship game?
Yes, I definitely think it's possible. And I think, if I had to bet on any championship matchup, it would probably be at this point Oklahoma State and Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't count out Kansas State just yet. Now I do think them, losing Skylar Thompson was big, and I think they'll end up fizzling out at some point. But as of right now, they're still playing good football.
Yeah, I'm exactly with you on that, too. At some point, I'm with you. I believe it has to happen. Let's take a look at Texas. Sam Ehlinger has accounted for 24 of their 28 touchdowns so far this year. Is it safe to say that the defense takes him away? They have a solid chance at this victory here?
Yeah, and I think that's your number one target is to limit him as much as you can, and that gives you your best chance to win. And I mean, in 2 of their 3 games, he has thrown for 5. He's had 5 touchdowns, and so if you want to beat Texas, you limit his production, and I think that's the name of the game.
Well, offensively for Oklahoma State, what do you see the game plan here being? I mean, do they end up riding the running backs a ton in this one against this Texas defense?
I think, I'm not going to act like I'm on the coaching staff and know what they're going to do, but I would like to see them start the game pretty aggressive through the air.
Okay.
Take some shots deep, and then you can lean on your running backs in the second half. But I think everybody knows you've got a dual threat running back in Spencer Sanders, who they're going to be looking for him to, take off in the backfield and run. Everybody's going to have their eyes on Chuba Hubbard to start the game. If you start the game with a couple of run plays and then do play action deep to Tylan Wallace, I think you can get a big break early on, and then you start to hammer home the run game.
Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. So right now, Oklahoma State opens as a 3.5-point favorite against Texas on Saturday, and I think a lot of that's just because they're at home. But do you see a finish in that range, or is it more of maybe a touchdown finish to you?
I do think it'll be 7 points or less.
Okay.
Depending on, I think both teams are going into this game, especially for Oklahoma State, because they got into this issue last year against Texas, where they settled for too many field goals instead of getting touchdowns. And I think both teams are going to come into this game knowing how important touchdowns are, and so we may see a 7-point differential just because they're not going to be kicking as many field goals, or at least trying to kick as many field goals, because both teams are going to try to punch it in the end zone. And so we may see a touchdown difference instead of a field goal difference. Okay,
yeah, I think I'm more with you on that one too. Let me throw one more question your way here and kind of switch sports, because the Oklahoma State basketball Big 12 schedule is now out. But for you, realistically, how good can you see this team being this year? Because we know the talent is certainly there, but there's also a lot of youth.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people talk about Cade Cunningham, rightfully so, because he's their most talented player. He's going to be high in the draft pick, possibly number 1 overall in the NBA draft. But I think as far as how far do they go, that's going to depend a lot on Isaac Likely's leadership and how he can bring these young guys, especially these young guards, into the fold to mature enough to where they can go deep. I think obviously they're going to be one of the top teams in the conference, which they should be. But I don't know, assuming when we don't know what's going to happen with the appeals, if they're going to have a postseason or not.
Right.
But for sake of conversation, let's say they do have a postseason. I don't think anybody can realistically predict how far they're going to go into the postseason until about the middle of the year, when we see how much the youth plays a factor into them being able to win close games and things of that nature. And I think a lot of that's going to depend on Isaac. I think Isaac is going to be a major piece to this team just because he's been there before within the program. So his leadership is going to be tested this year, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that as well. Again, that's Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World, covers Oklahoma State, joining me here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Follow him on Twitter at Frank_Bonner2. Frank, good stuff as always. Appreciate your time. We'll talk to you next week, and stay warm out there, man.
All right, you too. I just wanted to throw out there, looks like my Dodgers pick is looking pretty good right now.
I remember I was going to throw that in there. I'm glad you brought that up because, yeah, at the moment it's looking okay. Now, if the Rays can take it to 7, just expect next Tuesday for me to bring that back up.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna, and if they win, the first thing I'm gonna throw at you is the Dodgers.
Okay. Hey, I'm expecting. Don't forget that now.
I won't.
All right. Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it, man.
All right, you have a good one.
All right, that's Frank Bonner on the Afternoon Sports Drive here with me from the Tulsa World. Again, you follow him on Twitter at Frank_Bonner2. Yeah, he's right for the moment about the Dodgers, and but I'm still holding out a little bit of hope. It may be lost hope, but I'm still holding it out. When we come back here to round out the first hour, we'll get into an interesting story I found out of the Big Ten. And that's going to be it for the first hour. When we come back, obviously after that, we'll get into much more in the NFL. One former OSU wide receiver, it seems for now at least, has found a new home in the National Football League, and a lot more stories coming out of the NFL. Still to come, the Afternoon Sports Drive after this.
Whoa. Staring as I go, I gave until my soul.
Back to the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler rounding out hour number 1. So we knew that when the Big Ten came in with the football announcement that it was going to happen. No, that was great. I feel like it was a battle that was won because of how ridiculous it was for the Big Ten to initially say this was a no-go. And I'm sure when you listen to me on this station, you heard me all off season talking about how stupid of a decision that was. And now we're finding out that it really was. Everybody's been able to play football, and we have seen some interruptions. That was expected. But for the most part, so far, so good. That's college, that's NFL, that's high school, okay? But we know when the Big Ten comes back and when they gave their guidelines, there were still some ridiculous guidelines attached to everything. And one of them was the fact that if you tested positive, you had to sit out for 21 days. You had to sit out for 3 weeks after your positive test. That's a nice little chunk of a season right there. And when that came out, that was the biggest issue I had with what the Big Ten was talking about. Like, where in the world did it say at that point that a COVID-positive patient needed to be out for 3 weeks? We, as of now, still know that most mild cases take a week or two at the most to get over. So why am I bringing this up? Because redshirt freshman Graham Mertz with Wisconsin, we know he got that start last Friday over Illinois when Jack Cohen wasn't ready to go for them, and he went crazy. 20 of 21, throwing 248 yards and 5 touchdowns over Illinois, won 45-7. Well, then we find out that not only he, but his backup quarterback have both tested positive for the coronavirus, which means they're both out for 21 days, and now Wisconsin has to rely on their fourth-string quarterback. That to me right there, the fact that they've put that amount of time for a player that is most likely going to recover from this thing with no issue, he'll basically be sitting there for 3 weeks twiddling his thumbs around because the Big Ten still had to get in one more ridiculous little thing before they were able to click the yes button on football. They did that, and then, of course, by the time they did decide to go ahead and get started, we knew that there were going to be no open weeks. It was going to be straight in, you guys have to play, and if there's a COVID issue on the team and you miss a game, you miss a game, right? So I'm thrilled that the Big Ten came back. I was one of the biggest advocates on here cheering for it every single day. But this is next level ridiculous. You've got a starting quarterback who just hit a stride there now for Wisconsin, and coming up against Nebraska, they have to use a fourth string because he's out now for 21 days. I know he would have been out anyway for this one, but down the list from Big Ten matchups, a guy that will most likely have no issue with this is going to be sitting around wondering why he can't be in. Well, because the Big Ten had to make sure and get one more ridiculous factor into play here, and it was next level dumb to me. So I feel bad for Graham. I hope when he does come back, he dominates. When we come back here on the afternoon sports drive, hour number 2, I'm going to get into a little bit of Des Bryant. He now apparently has a new team in the NFL, but the question is, does it make sense for this team? We're going to answer that next.
Feel like I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my best, we'll begin with a 1 or a 2. Been a hell of a ride, but I'm thinking it's time to grow.
Metronome.
Man, I'm up to something. Oodie-la-dee-do, thank you all for coming. I hope you like the show, cause it's on a budget. So oodie-la-dee-do, yeah, come on, here we go, yeah, come on.
Here we go.
Welcome in, hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Everybody come hang. Let's go out with the bang.
Patrick Wheeler hanging out on this wintry Tuesday in Stillwater. It may not be as wintry wherever you are listening. We have a lot of people listening on the app. Hope wherever it is, the weather's okay, and you are rocking and rolling here with me on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. So, one former Oklahoma State wide receiver has now found himself another home in the NFL. And Des Bryant, when he left, or was actually cut from Dallas, we know that he was going to have one more shot, at least it seemed, with the Saints. Then it was it the ACL? No, it was the Achilles, I think, that he injured, and that was obviously a no-go. I still think at this point I really would have liked to see what he could have done with Drew Brees. You know, you pair him up with Drew Brees, and maybe he's on the other side of Michael Thomas, and maybe that was going to be the resurgence that he wanted in the NFL. But now the Baltimore Ravens say that they're going to sign him. He's going to be signed to the practice squad, and they'll go from there. And, I mean, I think he obviously makes the team. He's going to find himself on the field at some point with the Ravens. The question is, will he be a factor? Will it actually matter? And is he going to ultimately find what he's looking for? We're at the part of the show where we like to take a clip of something that another show talked about, and we'll react to it. This had to do with Dak. It was Stephen A. Smith on First Take earlier talking about, pardon me, not Dak, talking about Dez, I should say, talking about Dez joining the Ravens. And, well, at least the question was joining the Ravens. He didn't exactly give the answer that I think a lot of people were looking for here, but this is what he had to say about Dez Bryant making a resurgence, or at least an attempt at one, in the NFL.
I would love for him to be on an NFL roster. I would love for him to make it, because here's the deal. He was once a star in this league. He obviously fell off a little bit. And then he got let go by the Dallas Cowboys. And what really rakes my nerves about it is that he got a bad rap. Now, we know he tried to come back with New Orleans and then he got hurt, and we get all of that. But my big issue was that it wasn't just about football with him. He was perceived as problematic. And the Dallas Cowboys contributed, obviously, to letting that kind of stuff leak out about him. And that's what rubbed me the wrong way. And in the case of Dez Bryant, he got some money as a wide receiver, but in the same breath, he wasn't, he was perceived as being a malcontent, somebody that wasn't ideal for the locker room and things of this nature. So you decide not to bring him back. It just seems to me that his reputation was hurt by the Dallas Cowboys.
I'm really sure how that was the Dallas Cowboys' fault. I mean, they didn't hurt his reputation. That was Dez Bryant being immature. He was immature at Oklahoma State. The moment he got into the league, it didn't change. So I'm not really sure Stephen A. is trying to go off on Dallas there, saying that they were the reason that he was perceived as a problem. No, that's not true. I mean, they couldn't keep everything concealed. He was in the legal system. Where should I start with Dez? He was arrested for a Class A misdemeanor when he grabbed his mom and he slapped her with a baseball cap. Okay, you put hands or anything else on your mom and you've really automatically lost my respect, and to me you're just not a good person. Okay, he was given a criminal trespass warning for cussing out some mall cops because he and his buddies were asked to leave. Back in 2010, when he didn't get a catch against the Saints, he was held out without a catch. He was yelling and blaming everybody else. Everybody remembers that on the sideline. He missed workouts at times. He called out his own team's vice president, Stephen Jones. He allegedly stole jewelry. And let's not forget, the Cowboys literally had to put a babysitter on him at all times because timeouts never worked from Daddy Jerry Jones. They had to put a babysitter on Dez Bryant. Okay, his production went down after he signed that big deal with the Cowboys in 2015. He didn't have a 1,000-yard season after that. So to me, that's not the Dallas Cowboys allowing information and stories to get out that made it seem like Dez was a problem. He was a problem. And the Cowboys knew that. That's why he fell in their laps. It was a 22nd pick, I think, right? He fell into their laps at that spot because teams passed up on him and they weren't sure what his character was like. They didn't want to take a chance on it. They wanted to blow up the locker room. And I mean, first of all, Stephen didn't answer the question. Okay, the answer was, how did they think he was going to fare with the Ravens? And he didn't even talk about that. But when he brought that up, to blame his team for his constant immature acts is something I haven't heard of before. I mean, if you're going to be a problem in the NFL, then you deserve to be called out, or any sport. And that's what Dez was. Now, look, I never had a problem with what he did on the field. I thought his production, especially when he had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, had the most touchdowns in Cowboys history, right? I think he was a great player. But you mix all of that in with what he did off the field, and there was as much news off the field as there was on the field with him. Sometimes it seemed like he was more productive off the field, maybe in the wrong category, than he was on the field making catches. So I don't think the Cowboys are to blame for what he did. And I think, look, emotion is fine. Emotion is absolutely fine, especially in a high-tempered game like the NFL, where there are always emotions every single time you play, every single down. And it's actually needed at times. You actually need your players to be emotional. But Dez wasn't just emotional to me. It was an immature, constant temper tantrum type style, and he was a distraction. He was a distraction. I think he's a good player, and I never did doubt his talent. So the question is, do the Ravens make the right move by giving him another shot? It's not a secret that the Baltimore Ravens need help with the wide receiver spot. Okay, as I talked about with Levi yesterday, they don't really have anybody. Hollywood Brown is their best target, and he's definitely not a true wide receiver one. Willie Snead is 1,000 years old, and he's not going to be your next guy up. Okay, Duvernay either. So they definitely need help. I'm just not sure if Dez Bryant was the best option. He does provide some experience at that position, and that's good for your young players. Maybe even good for Lamar Jackson to bring some veteran experience in that position. But I'm just not sure this was this the best they could do? Or was this Lamar Jackson going to the front office and telling their guys at Baltimore, this is who I want? Kind of like a Antonio Brown thing with Tom Brady. I think that there could be some production from Dez when he gets back out on the field, but you are taking a risk, right? Guy hasn't played since 2017. So you're taking some risk. Now, I've seen some videos here and there where it looks like he's still got some ups and maybe the hands are still there, but you can't expect him to be speedy. You can't expect him to be as crisp of a route runner. So there are a lot of questions regarding Dez Bryant and whether he will fit into this system. Lamar Jackson, by the way, we have to remember, he's not your throwing type quarterback. This is a guy in Dez Bryant that likes a lot of balls to come his way. Well, Lamar Jackson loves to run it. Doesn't throw it all that much, and when he does, he hasn't been all that accurate this year. So you mix all that in with what Dez Bryant wants, what's he seeking? And I think it's not just a resurgence. I think it is a, hey, media also pay attention to me here again. It's been 3 years since Dez Bryant has gotten media attention. I think he comes back more mature. At least I hope by this time he is. I think from his 3 years off and seeing that there were a lot of teams that weren't interested, probably humbled him a little bit. Probably maybe at least attempted to fix the attitude a little bit. And that's needed. Okay, the Ravens don't need a distraction coming into their locker room. They're still one of the better teams in the NFL. So I don't think they would have signed off on Dez Bryant had they had any type of worry that he was going to mess things up. They got a good thing going on in Baltimore, and he doesn't need to be what implodes them. So this is a really interesting signing for me. Again, it's on the practice squad. He's not necessarily on the team, but he will be at some point. And I hope he finds success. Hope he finds what he's looking for. But the situation he's put himself in is not necessarily, I think, ideal for what he is looking for. Okay, that's the thing. Let's say a run-first quarterback, an offense that doesn't value wide receivers all that much, and a guy that's been out of that position, out of the league for 3 years. It's not easy to come back in the NFL. We've seen a lot of guys attempt it, and it's not that easy. But Dez, it just blows my mind. And that's what was nauseating to me about Cowboys fans. Dallas Cowboys fans. When Dez was in there in Dallas and he was throwing up the X and he was yelling, "We them boys," and America's team was out there being America's team, at least to some people, it got to the point where it was nauseating if you paid attention to Dez Bryant. It was next level. And I was never someone that, as anyone that's not a Cowboys fan, when they watch that from the outside in, they say, okay, that's enough. We get it. All that mixed in, it wasn't a good combination for anybody that he wanted to be a fan outside of Dallas. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Yeah, can you guys call the city and give us an update on the electrical outages and current temperature and a few things? A lot of us are stuck here in the cold, and we're kind of wondering what's going on. As a public service, could you do that?
We can attempt it. This is probably not. I don't know if this is the right spot for that. Are you out of power right now?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Supposedly there's 10,000 people out at Power and Stillwater. You'd be doing a great public service if you'd call the city and get an update on this deal.
I'll tell you what, we'll attempt to work on that and see what we can do. I'm sorry to hear about that. I know there are plenty of people that are in that situation. So
okay, that would really be a great public service for you guys.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I hate to hear that. I hate to hear people are so out with power. Ice storms are the worst, no doubt. You know who probably doesn't like ice storms? Des Bryant. So, yeah, we'll see what he ends up doing in the league. I think it's going to be really interesting to follow that story and see what exactly is going to end up with him with the Baltimore Ravens. He's in a league now in the AFC where it's like, hey, look, I'm going to come in and you have to know the part of it was we got a bunch of teams that we got to take down. It's not just Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. It's the Steelers in our own division are arguably the best team in football. And if they think he's going to help in winning that division, then by all means, go for it. But let me just make sure that my skepticism is noted in them signing Des Bryant. We come back, break down what the Kansas City Chiefs did over the weekend. I didn't get to them yesterday. They got a good win against the Broncos. They really didn't have to play that much offense. Also, the Seahawks and the Cardinals. That was some good stuff on Sunday night. One of the best football games I think I've ever seen. And we'll get into some more Antonio Brown. I think where he's ending up right now is really an interesting story. We'll get to all that coming up next in the Afternoon Sports Drive. Stay with us.
You can call till your voice is running out, but I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. I'm somewhere far away where you can't bring me down, so I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. Yeah. Run it back, tell them what I'm coming at. I was on the hit there, now I'm done with that.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler here on this Tuesday. Per the caller's request earlier, I did check power outages. There are like 5,000 people right now without power around the Stillwater area, and as a word, they are working on those right now. Crews are out everywhere. You can visit stillwater.org. Doable on a phone or a laptop, whatever you need, whatever you have, and check out where the outages are, where the crews are. So there's your update. Hope everybody is staying safe out there. On Sunday, Kansas City, the Chiefs came in against a Broncos team on a really snowy day, and the domination against the Broncos, even before Patrick Mahomes was the quarterback, has been really next level. We haven't seen anything like it. The Broncos just hate to see Kansas City come into town or have to go into Kansas City. But it was a game where the Chiefs didn't really have to unleash everything and could still really dominate. You know, they win 43-16. You put up 40-plus points in a football game anytime, that's a pretty good day. I mean, Chad Henne, backup quarterback, was able to score on that defense. So that kind of tells you where things were for the most part. By the way, I was 2-2 on my parlay 2 nights ago. Couple of the bets I gave you guys. Chiefs were an easy take at 7-point favorites, as well as the over in that Seahawks-Cardinals game was very easily hit, 54.5. That went into overtime. So what the Chiefs end up doing, you get a 102-yard kick return from Byron Pringle, and then you get a pick six by Dirty Dan Sorensen, and all of a sudden, Patrick Mahomes in the offense hasn't seen the field in a long time. And they only end up running 51 offensive plays, which is nothing. Tyreek Hill had 6 grabs. It's a season high for him, actually, believe it or not. But the offense didn't have to do much overall. And I think that really does show you in a team like Kansas City where they separate themselves apart with other teams in the NFL is that how they can score in so many different ways. You can have the best quarterback in the league throw for 200 yards and a touchdown, and that's it, and still win with 40-plus points on the board. When well-rounded teams are as dynamic as they are now in the NFL, that's where you get a few of them really separated. You know, the Chiefs, the Steelers, the Packers, the Seahawks on a good day, the Ravens on a good day. Those are the ones you really look at and say they got about just everything right, check off all the boxes and say pretty good, pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. It was good to see. I think the most interesting storyline coming in was the backfield. It was Le'Veon Bell's first game as a Chief, and we saw him out-carry Clyde 9-6. So it wasn't a huge difference. We also didn't get a big-time sample size there. the question tossed around is, in this next game, when Le'Veon plays his former team where he came from with the Jets, do they give him a giant workload? And I'm going to say they give him a pretty nice size workload. That means that he's going to probably get the initial bulk and maybe the goal line carries. But this is also a team in Kansas City that the entire starting offense, which I think including Le'Veon Bell, is going to be finished midway third quarter at the latest in this ball game. However, the question coming into it as well was, what did Le'Veon do to this offense? Did he fit in with Kansas City? And with the scheme that is ran there with the Chiefs, I think it's hard to say no. Because we did see some bursts that he still had. He busted one off for 17 yards. The patience was still there. When I saw a couple of those runs where he's literally waiting and picking apart the middle of the field, and he is waiting on his offensive lineman to make blocks for him and get in front of everybody on the defense, that's classic Le'Veon Bell. And if there's anybody that can figure out how to mix him and Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the same backfield, it's Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. So he went to, and actually for him, a really dream situation. There were a lot of people that said, okay, but does the backfield really need someone like Le'Veon? And I think what we can take away from all this, because it goes back to Antonio Brown, what we can take away from all this is that the best teams don't stop. That also comes away with signing players. The best teams never stop adding to their arsenal. It's never, okay, that's enough. It's never enough. There's always one more piece they think they can grab. And that's what we're seeing with Kansas City now. That's what we're seeing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When they go out and say, all right, let's get Antonio Brown. We don't necessarily need him by any means. In fact, one of our entire wide receiver core is arguably the deepest in the league. But let's go ahead and add one more piece. Why? Because we're the Buccaneers and we don't stop. We're the transformed Buccaneers. Kansas City did the same thing. We went to the first round and let's draft a running back. Let's put him in the backfield. Okay, he goes crazy a couple of games ago. He's leading all rookies in rushing yards. Oh, but by the way, let's go ahead and add a running back to that backfield. Why? Because we're the Kansas City Chiefs and we don't stop. The best teams in any sport know there's never, ever a good time to let up. And that includes on the field, on the court, but also adding pieces. The front office, I say this over and over, the front office is just as integral as a part of a team that the players are. When you get a guy that's going to come in and run the ship tight, make sure everybody knows how it goes down, and then sprinkle in the ability to bring in big names and big talents, it equates to success on the football field. It equates to success on the court and the diamond, wherever you want to look. But a lot of people like to focus on the product out there on the field and the court, when a lot of it, as we're seeing now, kind of evolve, initially starts with that front office. Coming up for Kansas City, obviously with the Jets, as I said, this is going to be the easiest win of all time. They come in at 19.5-point favorites in the NFL. That's really unheard of. The Jets really shouldn't show up. So it's going to be tough. But it will be obviously just fun to see them kind of wax a team. We all enjoy a good waxing every now and again. Last Sunday night, I thought the Sunday night football game was incredible. The Seahawks and the Cardinals go to overtime. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury is, this year, I think he's almost ready and has sort of taken that next step. Because we did see him burst onto the scene in the NFL, and he was drawing up plays, and his offense was really fun to watch, and it was dynamic. But last year, there was a couple of games where we saw him kind of regress a little bit. He was getting a bit conservative. They found some success in the running game, and then they added Kenyon Drake, and it made it a little bit even more of a success at times. But he got a little too comfortable with the running game. Kyler Murray's still on that team, and he went away from some of the more exciting schemes and got a bit complacent to me, and was even a couple points questionable on play calls on certain downs and that type of thing. But this year, he has unleashed Kyler Murray to the next level. There was a lot of people when Kyler Murray came out of Oklahoma into the NFL and said he doesn't have what it takes because of his size. A lot of people really do not like small quarterbacks, and I get it. It's not the ideal trait to have if you're going to be a quarterback in the National Football League, to be short. Drew Brees has defied that, and I think that Kyler Murray is on his way. But what gives him such an advantage is he is the absolute definition of a dual-threat quarterback. He, again, is what Lamar Jackson wants to be, or what people want Lamar Jackson to be, because he can sling it all the way down the field at any moment. He still needs to work on some of his accuracy for the most part, but he can also scramble. He can make plays with his feet, and he's going to make guys miss, and he will absorb contact. A lot of things that quarterbacks don't do, and he does that. But for the most part this season, Sunday night football games have been really incredible. You know, we got to see two arguably top 5 quarterbacks in the league. I honestly think Kyler Murray is knocking on the door there, and Russ certainly is one. You get to go head-to-head. So the Seahawks, we get into overtime. The Seahawks win the toss, and they receive. And I'm thinking, okay, this is very likely this game is probably over. No one's going to stop Russell Wilson going down the field and scoring. And this is the thing from the NFL, and I've said this for years, it is so stupid that a team may not actually touch the ball in overtime in the NFL. There's two things that need to change in the NFL like tomorrow. Let me get this out of the way right now because they're really long overdue. Number one, you got to fix the overtime rules again. I know they were modified, but simply play out a 10-minute quarter. I don't think that's asking too much. I know you just played a full game, but put 10 minutes on the clock and you let it run down to 0, and whoever is winning at that point wins the game. 10 minutes and can actually move pretty fast in the NFL. That actually gives both teams a shot. Why in the world should it be based on if your defense can make a stop? There's always those fans that when they win, they run to that excuse of, I'll just have a better defense and that wouldn't happen. Well, Sunday Night Football, that was a great example for how stupid that argument really is. Because the Seahawks defense is really bad, but they helped keep them in the game, and at that point they were absolutely gassed. So you can't ask a defense that's been out there for the entire game and now having to play overtime to make one more stop. You can do it. That's dumb. The defense shouldn't have to make a stop to allow the offense to touch it in that period. Give them 10 straight minutes, and even if they get scored on, let that team get the ball. It's so dumb. Number 2, the other thing that needs to change. The clock needs to be stopped in the final 2 minutes to spot the ball. Okay, it needs to be like college football. You always get big plays from an offense late at the end of the game, big-time throws deep down the field, and the whole team has to end up sprinting down the field while an old man referee tries to spot the ball. And how much clock is rolling off that entire time? And how many times do you see the ref that's spotting the ball sitting on it, waiting? Okay, now we're good to go. On Sunday night, we saw Larry Fitzgerald show us why, again, he's one of the greats. This was a little thing that he did. It was a big throw from Kyler Murray late into overtime. He immediately goes to the guy that caught the ball, I think it was DeAndre Hopkins, took it from him because DeAndre Hopkins was being held down by a defender like we see a lot in the NFL late in games, takes the ball from him, throws it to his center so he can get it set and ready to go. But he shouldn't have to do that. That's the one thing that Larry Fitzgerald does. He's just so smart in the NFL. He does that, but you shouldn't have to do that. It's one of the dumbest things in the NFL. You're relying on the refs to spot the ball. So those two things got to change like tomorrow in the NFL. But anyways, Russ was great again. I think that the 3 interceptions were killer for him and the Seahawks. We don't see him throw multiple interceptions in a game that often. And for the most part, they were actually bad interceptions too. They weren't just trying to, tight interceptions or off the hands. They were pretty bad throws. Other than that, though, Russ, I think he's still your MVP. And we also saw, how good was Tyler Lockett? That dude went crazy. It was like 15 catches, 200 yards. And one of the catches, the very first play of the game that he made was insane. But I think ultimately the play of the game actually comes from a guy that wasn't that involved, and that's DK Metcalf. I know a lot of you guys have him on your fantasy team, and you probably weren't happy with the stinker that he put on Sunday night. But how about when Budda Baker picks off Russell Wilson, and DK Metcalf comes from across the formation and is able to chase down Budda Baker before he's able to get in the end zone all the way down the field. He reached like 21-mile-an-hour speeds. Like no human being is supposed to run that fast. It was insane to see. If you haven't seen that, I encourage you to look up that video. It's one of the most effort-filled athletic plays I think I've ever seen in sports. It was crazy. On the other side, again, for the Cardinals, I think Kyler Murray is really, truly a dual threat. He really is. His interception was also bad, but that goes back to the accuracy problems I'm talking about. And he has, to me, has thrust himself in that MVP conversation. If you want to watch fun, exciting football, watch Kyler Murray. I know there's a lot of people that he's from Oklahoma. I get it, but in the NFL, watch him. He makes some really good plays that a lot of quarterbacks aren't going to make. When we come back here on the afternoon sports drive, look more at what the Bucs are doing with Antonio Brown. I mean, does it make sense? Does it make sense? Also, I've got a stat. There's one team in the NFL that will absolutely blow your mind. They still manage to lose every single week, even though statistically there's no way they can. We'll tell you who that is coming up next to round out the show on the afternoon sports drive. Triple Play Sports Radio Network back after this. Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler wrapping it up here on this Tuesday. So is Antonio Brown really going to work out? I mean, is he going to work out with the Bucs, or is this just what is this? I think that he really will. And I don't know if maybe I'm too big of a believer in what Tom Brady can do as a big brother slash dad slash babysitter. But I think that's basically what he's going to have to be for Antonio Brown and for success. But there's just so much, even someone as mentally unstable as Antonio Brown has to see the silver lining here. Because there's so much incentive with this Bucs team. If the defense was still bad and the offensive line wasn't good and there was no running game and Tom Brady was old and throwing like he was old, then you probably reconsider, even if Tom Brady tells you to come over. But when all those are the complete opposite and the defense is next level and Tom Brady is looking really, really good and there's a run game and the offensive line is good and you have a few other receiving weapons next door, there's just way too much incentive to screw this up. And I know there'll be plenty of people that say, oh, look at Antonio Brown. Look what he did in the past. This dude almost quit because he couldn't get the helmet he wanted in the NFL. I know. I get it. He is not all there. But when he comes out in week 9, and if he has another, like he did with Tom Brady in New England, 4 or 5 catch game and the touchdown, we're going to come back on here and say, look, told you so. There's just a lot of positive there for Antonio Brown to get right. That's the other thing. This is a get right situation. It's not just a get back on the field. It's a get my mentals correct here. Get me back on the right path as a human being. Because if he screws this one up, whether it be social media, whether it be some off the field thing, whether it be another legal issue, if he screws this one up, I mean, how many chances can a guy get? Really? How many chances can the guy get? I think it's going to work out. Bottom line, I think it's going to work out. So let me get to the Falcons real quick. The Atlanta Falcons over the weekend managed to lose again to the Lions. Okay, and only the Falcons could manage to lose by scoring a touchdown. What does that mean? Well, Todd Gurley gets an open lane to the end zone and realizes, too late in fact, that if he would just go down on a knee, the Falcons could kick a field goal, run the clock out, and win it right there. But he tries to hold up at the goal line, and he can't, and he falls right into the end zone, and it gives the Lions the ball back, and Matthew Stafford gets down the field with the Lions, and they end up beating the Falcons. The ways that the Falcons have lost this year alone would drive any football fan crazy. I couldn't imagine being a Falcons fan, the way that they've lost. Here's the crazy stat of the day. You can take this home and then tell everybody this one. With the loss against the Lions, per SportsCenter, the Falcons have now lost 3 games this season. 3, where they had a win probability of at least 98%. 98% win probability. The most by any team in the last 20 seasons. The rest of the NFL combined has 4 such losses this season. That's just unbelievably terrible. I don't even know how that happens. I do not know how that happens. And I've always made this argument too. It goes back when you look at this game that when your defense is terrible, like the Lions at that point should just allow a touchdown. Honestly, they should just allow it to happen. And they ultimately got lucky because Todd Gurley fell in. But at that point, when your defense is bad, you allow the touchdown and let your offense have more time because you know that your offense is the only way you're going to win this game is if they have enough time to get down the field and score and win. There needs to be more teams that adopt that style. It's not giving up. It's called being smart. It's not just allowing touchdowns. It's called being smart. And the NFL should have more teams, I think, that do that, especially with how bad some of the defenses are in late game situations. Finally here, last thing I want to hit on before we hop off. I thought the Titans-Steelers game was awesome. That was the game of the week going in that we thought. Maybe the Seahawks-Falcons game took over, but the Titans-Steelers game was fun. The Steelers are arguably the best team in football. I wonder how many people, when they think of the teams they hate in the NFL, they think probably the Patriots, right? People not around this area would say some Cowboys. But I think a lot of them would have to go to the Steelers, too. Never been a fan of the Steelers, or a lot of people haven't. But I'm not even joking here about them being the best team in the league. Big Ben looked good, and he doesn't even have to be that great because his receivers are so deep. And I'm sorry, OSU fans, but James Washington has now basically been replaced by Chase Claypool. Didn't have a good game at all, obviously, last time out, but James Washington is unfortunately fading away, I believe, in that receiving core because Chase Claypool has burst onto the scene. But the defense is really incredible. I mean, you're able to hold Derrick Henry in check for the most part. That's you're doing your job. Problem for the Titans, I still think they're a really good team, but my goodness, their kicker. I remember exactly what we were talking about here in Week 1 in the NFL. We get the 2 Monday night games, and Gostkowski gets on and cannot hit a field goal to save his life. Never seen anything like it. Can't hit anything. Well, the Titans and Tannehill get him down inside for a 40-yard field goal, and he misses. And the Steelers end up winning the game. He's 5 for 11 with field goals within 40 yards. So I think if you're the Titans, you really might start considering going somewhere else with your kicking game if he can't win you that one. But props to Ryan Tannehill for even getting them back. I think the Titans are legit. There's a lot of good teams in the AFC this year. The Steelers are back with Big Ben. The Titans are legit. The Chiefs, the Ravens. There are a lot of really good teams in the AFC. But that was a fun matchup. It's going to continue to be. I can't wait for the Ravens-Steelers coming up this Sunday. We're going to see who's got the upper hand on that one, too. Should be a lot of fun. Of course, we'll preview that later on in the week. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive with Patrick Wheeler here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Hope everyone's staying safe out there. Stay cool, or stay warm, I should say, and then stay safe in the ice and all that stuff that's going on. Again, if you have any issues, you have power outages or whatever, check out stillwater.org. They will actually give you a live update of where the crews are fixing the power lines and all that stuff, because I know the ice is supposed to continue into the night. So do your best to stay warm, stay safe, and make sure you're taking care of each other out there. Always tune into the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. And again, we'll see you back here tomorrow. I'm Patrick Wheeler. Tom Dorado will be joining me on tomorrow's show at 3 o'clock, so you'll make sure to want to tune into that as well. Until then, everybody have a great Tuesday night.